The gym used to be my escape. An hour to sweat out stress, forget about the kids and endless chores. Now, it's turned into something else entirely. All thanks to Daniel. He's one of those personal trainers, all smiles and toned muscles. First, it was just an extra glance my way, then the casual touches, correcting my form. Nothing major, but those little things started to get under my skin. I'd find myself lingering by his station, inventing reasons to need his advice. One Wednesday, my phone buzzed after a workout. It was him. "Great session today." Like that was normal, a trainer texting a client. Stupidly, I replied, and that opened the floodgates. Innocent chats turned into flirty jokes, then invites for a quick coffee after my next workout. I knew it was wrong. Michael's a good husband, but damn, it felt thrilling. A rush I hadn't had in years. Our first kiss was in the dingy gym parking lot, me dodging security cameras like a thief. Guilt gnawed at me, but Daniel made it disappear with a smile and a whisper of, "This is what you deserve." And God help me, I craved more. Workdays became a blur of stolen lunches, his hand lingering on mine over cheap diner food. Lies flowed like water, late meeting, sweetie. Girlfriend's car trouble, won't be home, till late. Michael never suspected a thing, bless his trusting heart. Part of me hated that, the other part reveled in the deception. Then came the close call. Michael home early, me flushed and breathless from a rushed tryst in the back stairwell. I stammered something about extra cardio, heart pounding. I couldn't keep this up forever. Every text was a ticking time bomb. Every lingering glance could be the one that blew my whole life apart. But Daniel's touch, his promises, they held me captive. I was playing with fire, and it was starting to feel dangerously sweet. This wasn't a fling. I was getting in deep, and with each step, there was no turning back. The lie was out. My bestie's got the flu, needs help, I'd told Michael, kissing him goodbye. Each word tasted sour. That night wasn't about helping anyone but me and Daniel. The cheap motel felt luxurious when his hands were on me, miles away from the reality of diapers and homework. We spent the weekend tangled up, ordering greasy room service, pretending the world didn't exist. Each hour was a stolen treasure, and each one made the pit of guilt in my stomach deepen. Sunday night, driving home, I felt like a ghost. Michael greeted me tired but happy, ready to swap weekend stories. I mumbled something about bad traffic and a rough drive. Back to the routine. Laundry that never ended, kids whining for snacks. All I could think of was how different Daniel made me feel. Desired, reckless, alive. It warred with the familiar ache of betraying the man snoring beside me each night. Michael, who worked his fingers to the bone to give us a good life. And I was throwing it back in his face. Something shifted in Michael those next few weeks. Little things. A lingering look over dinner, a casual, "So, how was the drive to Sarah's?" My heart would skip a beat. Did he know? Was he playing a game? I'd laugh it off, too loud, too eager to prove it was all innocent. But I wasn't innocent. The guilt was eating me alive, squeezing me between the life I'd built and the thrill of this. Whatever this was with Daniel. I couldn't stop. I couldn't end it. I was trapped on a ride I desperately wanted off of, yet couldn't bear to get off. Every text from Daniel had become a loaded weapon. I'd delete conversations instantly, heart pounding. But what if Michael had seen one already? What if he checked my phone? The paranoia was like an itch I couldn't scratch. I started imagining him lurking behind me, eyes burning into the screen as I messaged some excuse to run errands. Then, the necklace. Damn you, Daniel. It was gold, delicate, a tiny heart pendant that screamed, affair. At first, I shoved it in a drawer, guilt gnawing at me, but then, one morning, the drawer called out. It felt so good slipping it on, a wicked secret against my skin. That was my first big mistake. My second? Checking my reflection every 2 seconds, adjusting the chain, feeling weirdly powerful. Michael's always been oblivious to stuff like that, I told myself. Famous last words. New necklace? Looks nice, he said over dinner a few nights later. My blood ran cold. Had he seen Daniel buy it? Was this some sort of trap? Oh, this old thing? I forced a laugh. Had it forever, you just never noticed. He didn't push it, but that night I dreamed I was choking on the heart pendant, its chain tightening around my neck. Michael changed after that, not in big ways, but enough to send me spiraling. He'd linger by my phone when it buzzed, or ask about my day with a sharpness in his voice. Before, Daniel was the escape, the excitement. Now, Every interaction with him felt like another nail hammered into the coffin of my marriage. I'd started this fire, and now it was burning out of control, all thanks to my own stupid pride and a shiny necklace I couldn't take off. Sarah. Bless her heart, and curse her loose lips. She was supposed to be my rock, the one who'd cover for me, no questions asked. But over coffee, she casually mentioned needing to pick me up early to beat the gym rush. Michael's head snapped up so fast I almost spilled my latte. You two go to the gym together? It was an innocent question, the kind meant to fill awkward pauses. But to me, it sounded like an alarm bell. The rest of the weekend was agony. Michael was off, a tightness around his mouth, a strange alertness in his eyes. I was playing a dangerous game, and I knew the clock was ticking. My next lie, my car broke down outside the city, came out with a tremor I couldn't hide. He didn't say a word as I packed my overnight bag, but I felt his gaze burning holes through me. There was only one way that would end, him in the car, tailing me. Sure as anything, he'd be parked outside that cheap motel, waiting for me to slip through the door with Daniel. And damn it, I'd do it anyway. Because as much as the fear knotted my stomach, a twisted part of me craved the confrontation. Craved seeing the pain flash across Michael's face as he finally saw me for what I was. A liar, a selfish, reckless woman who didn't deserve him. Maybe that would shock me out of this, force me to stop. Maybe it was the only way out of this twisted mess. As I drove to meet Daniel, I wasn't excited anymore, just numb. The next few hours, they could break me. They might even destroy me. But God, they had to. I couldn't keep living like this. One foot in the sunlight with Michael, the other in the shadows with Daniel, a creature of deceit stitched together from two broken halves. Something had to give. The motel room blurred through a haze of tears. Michael stood there, not the kind, familiar man I'd married, but someone cold, shattered. Words spilled out of me, apologies, desperate excuses, begging for forgiveness. Don't, he choked out. Just. Don't say another word. That night, all the noise, the passion, the lies. They vanished, replaced by the deafening silence between us in our own bed. He didn't touch me, just stared at the ceiling with dead eyes. I don't think either of us slept. Morning brought a nightmare dressed as reality. I'm leaving, he said, voice flat. He packed a bag with robotic movements, as if his limbs weren't his own. A lawyer will be in touch, was all he offered before he walked out the door, and a piece of my soul walked out with him. For a few days, it was a pathetic circus. Me, on one scratched-up phone line begging a confused Daniel to understand. Me, on the other, choking out an explanation to my parents, who sounded 1,000 miles away. All of it punctuated by Michael's icy messages, lawyer jargon, and threats about the kids. My world spun out of control, every spin throwing me closer to the edge. Late one night, my phone buzzed. Normally, my heart would leap at Daniel's name, but now, dread pooled in my stomach. When I answered, his voice was tight. Claire. This is too much. What Michael's doing. It's not good for either of us. But you said, I sputtered, desperate. Then it hit me. Of course. No man wants a woman with that kind of baggage. Michael's next text cut through my pathetic bargaining with Daniel. If you want to see your kids again, get to my parents' house. Alone. Tomorrow at noon. It wasn't a request, it was a death sentence. I was losing everything: husband, family, lover, even those innocent kids caught in my selfish crossfire. Driving to Michael's parents was like driving to my own execution. Each mile was another nail in the coffin of the life I'd wrecked. My hands shook on the wheel, barely able to hold it straight. Daniel hadn't stopped calling since hanging up on me. His texts shifted from sweet promises to veiled threats. This is it, Claire. You choose me, you choose a new life. Did he think himself the prize? Pathetic. Suddenly, a scream ripped through the car. My son, hidden in the backseat where I thought he'd been napping. Mommy? Who's Daniel? Why are you yelling? Fear spiked through me, he'd heard it all. My messy arguments, the crying jags. Pulling over, I tried to form some lie, a fairy tale for a 6-year-old. But his confused little face, so much like Michael's, broke me. The truth came out in choked sobs, age-inappropriate words spilling from my lips: betrayal, divorce, another man. His big eyes welled up, and that was worse than any of Michael's anger. Back on the road, Daniel's voicemails filled the silence, demands, deadlines. I tossed the phone out the window. It felt good for about 2 seconds, until the full weight of what I'd lost sank in. My son, scarred by my choices. Michael, probably cursing my name. And Daniel. Never truly mine to begin with. My hands found the necklace then, ripping it from my neck. Each link felt like a shackle breaking. This wasn't about either man anymore. This was about finding a way to salvage what was left of myself, what was left of a life for my kids. Maybe at Michael's parents' house, amidst the fallout and heartbreak, I'd find a starting point. If there was anything left to start from at all. Michael's parents' house was a ghost of our happier days. His mom's hugs were tight, filled with a pity that stung worse than her anger could have. His dad just looked old. They herded me into the living room, Michael sitting there, a stranger in a familiar place. I still don't understand, his voice cracked. Why? The words came out in a rush. Excuses about feeling lost, needing excitement, and how much I still loved him. Please, Michael, please. He listened, then laughed, a bitter sound that made me shrink. You think you get both? Ruined me and still keep your little fling? That's not how this works. He stood, pulling out a thick folder, tossing it on the table. Pictures. Of me and Daniel, clear as day. Dates, locations, all the sickening details laid bare by a private detective. The rest of the day blurred. Lawyers talking jargon, custody schedules that made my head pound. Michael's face hardening with each signature. Me? I was numb, a puppet being pulled by forces I couldn't control anymore. Nights were spent tossing between Daniel's desperate pleas and my parents' guest room, a child's bed made strange by my adult failures. Each morning, I'd check my phone, hoping for a miracle, knowing there'd be none. Then, the summons, court. That sterile word, suddenly the epicenter of my world. Newspapers hinted at the scandal, neighbors stared. In that courtroom, under oath, I choked out the dirty details, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's name tasted like acid. Each word destroyed another piece of me, the woman I used to be. The judge's verdict was swift, brutal. Michael got primary custody, proof of my infidelity damning me. Leaving the courthouse, flashes of cameras blinded me. I wasn't just Claire anymore. I was the cheating wife, the scandalous woman whispered about in the grocery store line. It was a label I'd wear long after Daniel was just another bad memory. The kids were gone, just like that. Picked up from school by Michael, not me. Court orders, the lawyer said, temporary until the full hearing. I sat on the curb outside their empty rooms, a panicky animal, waiting for my children to appear. They never did. No messages from Daniel, no surprise visits. Just radio silence echoing the emptiness of the house. My parents sent polite texts, checking in, let us know if you need anything. Translated. We love you, but damn, you screwed up, and we don't want to get tainted by this mess. Old friends stopped calling. A few brave ones would offer casseroles at the door, pity in their eyes. They couldn't meet my gaze for long, as if my betrayal might be contagious. The checkout lady at the grocery store, she knew. Her tight smile said it all. News nights were the worst. Reports from the courthouse, my name followed by words like, homewrecker, desperate. Michael's face, tight with fury, denying interviews. It played out on a loop inside my head, a soundtrack of my own destruction. My parents suggested therapy. The shrink listened for an hour, nodding, then said, you have to take responsibility. This didn't just happen. I wanted to scream. I did, in my car, parked down some forgotten road. Responsibility was a weight too heavy to bear. It was all I could do to survive day by day. One afternoon, a rock smashed through my bedroom window. No note, just shattered glass and the cold truth. I was on my own in this. Not with Michael, not with Daniel, not with anyone. The thrill had left me stranded, a shipwreck on the shore of a life I'd blown to pieces. The only person who might salvage something from this wreckage was me, but God, I didn't even know where to start. The job at the diner came out of desperation. My savings were gone, lawyer bills piled up, and the looks I got when I ventured out for groceries were too much. Waitress with a side of scandal, I overheard one customer whisper. Perfect. At least here, I could hide in plain sight. The other waitresses were a mix of hard-luck moms and college girls looking for beer money. They didn't pry, just showed me how to balance loaded plates without spilling coffee on myself. The manager, Lou, had eyes that missed nothing. One slow night, he sat down with a sigh, handing me a newspaper. Front page. Right beside an ad for used tires, homewrecker Claire seeks redemption? The article rehashed my sins, mentioned my custody battle. Lou just grunted. Look, I don't give a damn about your love life. You work hard, don't steal, we're good. Work became my lifeboat. Grueling shifts, the smell of grease, the dull roar of gossip kept my mind too busy to unravel. At home, the silence was the loudest. The kids' photos on the fridge were a knife twist I was too weak to take down. Each night ended with cheap wine and reruns, trying to drown out the echoes of my own bad choices. Job applications went into the void. Impressive resume, they'd say, smiles faltering when they Googled my name. Rejection after rejection piled up, mirroring the weight in my chest. Some days, getting out of bed felt impossible. What was the point of fighting for a life I'd already ruined? Then, one rainy morning, I found Michael's car in my driveway. He was thinner, shadows under his eyes. The kids, he started and choked up. They miss you. My heart did a stupid, hopeful flip. Then, wariness set in. Not back together, he clarified, holding up his hands. Supervised visits. Just. Can you? For them? The fight went out of me. For the kids. That was the last shred of purpose left to cling to proof that I wasn't just the monster the town, the world, painted me as. The first supervised visit was in a sterile park, a social worker watching like a hawk. My kids, they looked at me like strangers, their eyes guarded. We kicked a ball around awkwardly, stilted conversation filling the gaps where laughter used to be. Leaving, I couldn't even bring myself to hug them goodbye. That night, the wine bottle was my only comfort. Nights became the enemy. The TV flickered, casting shadows that morphed into Daniel's face or whispered accusations in Michael's voice. Sleep, when it came, was filled with nightmares of courtroom judges and kids turning away from me in disgust. The shame was a physical ache, a sickness I couldn't cure. One day, at the end of a particularly brutal shift, I looked up and there Michael stood. Just him, no kids. An older woman was at his side, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Their smiles were easy, familiar, and a hot spike of jealousy shot through me so strong I almost dropped my tray of sodas. He didn't approach my table, just nodded from a distance. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a calm indifference. A new life. That's what they had. Happy, whole, without the stain of my betrayal. Seeing it made my own isolation unbearable. Weeks bled into months. The job, the supervised visits, the lonely apartment, a bleak routine I couldn't escape. Then came the final court hearing. Each piece of my carefully constructed life was dismantled. Alimony, child support, the house sold. The judge's final words echoed in the empty courtroom. Your actions, Mrs. Well, your name doesn't matter anymore. They've caused irreparable harm. This court finds you unfit. Leaving, there were no cameras, nobody cared. The cheating wife wasn't news anymore. I was just broken. A cautionary tale whispered behind cupped hands, a woman waiting for the next bad decision to finish the job of destroying what little remained of myself.